Hey everybody, Lee and Jim here with LG Speed and Custom. We literally just finished Steve Tilley's 59 Ford, and now we're jumping right into Andrew Brittany's 56 Chevy pickup. So do you remember the Model T that Jim and I chopped and then we put the acrylic roof insert in? That used to be Andrew Brittany's car. It's now owned by Mike. This used to be Mike's truck. Just before we did all that work, they did a swap-a-roo. Andrew traded the Model T to Mike and got this truck in exchange. So now Andrew wants to kind of make it his own, and he brought it here to have that done. We are going to be putting a Heights Mustang 2 front end in it. We're putting a Ford Explorer 8.8 in it. It's already got a small block with, I believe, a 700 R4 transmission in it, so we're going to be leaving that. We're doing headers, we're doing disc brake. Well, obviously the Mustang 2 is going to have disc brakes, but we're going to put a power brake booster assembly into it, as well as a fuel cell, headers, and a whole new exhaust system. So we'll bring the truck in and start the teardown on it. More importantly, should Jim get these for his van?
Probably.
Probably should. So this is a Ford Explorer 8.8 rear end that we're going to be putting in. It's got disc brakes on the back. They're super strong and they're super cheap. You can buy these on Marketplace for like 200 to 400 bucks, pretty much ready to go. Andrew has redone the brakes on this one. We have to put new brake lines on it, or maybe put a little hose clamp or something across there. Just kidding. We'll download the Bluetooth brake app. So we're going to start with this on the back end. Before we tear anything apart, Jim is measuring the factory ride height. That way when we are done everything that we're going to be doing on this truck, we know how much we lowered it and, yeah, basically how many inches it went down compared to what it was at. Once that's done, I think we'll pull the box off the back, and then Jim's going to tackle this rear end project. Well, we've got the box off. We're going to start stripping this down now. And when I say we're going to start stripping this down, Jim's going to start stripping it down because I'm working on that 32 right now. We're going to remove this exhaust system. We're going to remove these little helper springs. This bump stop, we've determined that this is the center line for where the rear axle is going to be, based on that's the center of the bump stop, and the bump stop looks pretty much in line with the axle. We're going to be taking those out because we're going to be putting a C-notch in here. Probably remove most of this exhaust system because we're building a whole new exhaust system to go in. Once we get the rear end out, then we'll start on our C-notch system. Jim's got the rear end out of here and the tailpipe's all out of here, so he's gonna cut these rivet heads off and we'll blast these bump stops out of here. And then we can start fitting the Ford 8.8. So the spring perches aren't going to work on this 8.8, so we're cutting them off with the torch. Then we'll clean everything up with the grinder and fit. We got some brand new spring saddles to put in. Well, Jim's got the old spring perches cut off, and we just set a new set of spring perches in there. We set the rear end on the spring perches. So now we're gonna square it up side for side, set the pinion angle, and then we can probably just tack those for now. Eventually they'll get welded in place. We've got new plates that go on the bottom, like so. And some new U-bolts. For local people, we get these plates from West Shore Spring and 4x4. They're very reasonably priced. Cheaper than you can make them at home. We've got our pinion angle set now. We just pulled the angle off of the engine and then set the rear end to be the same angle. Jim's gonna tack the spring saddles in place. We're just gonna tack them for now in case something gets weird and we weren't right. It's easy to correct it. And while he's doing that, I'm gonna start on our C-notch here. So I've done a few of these trucks in the past, and I've always just done a little pipe notch in the frame rail like that. But I'm concerned that this might not be enough travel. We've only got like maybe 3 inches, and we still have the weight of the box that's gonna go on. We're putting a fuel cell in the back. There was no floor or anything in the box, so if Andrew puts a wood floor in, that's gonna add a bit of weight. So I'm thinking I might build a C-notch that goes a little bit higher. And because he has no floor in the box, we don't have to worry about the floor in the box hitting it. Just transferred my cardboard template to Fusion 360 here. So now I'm gonna cut it out. I'm just gonna cut it out of some like 14 or 16 gauge or something because it's cheaper than, you know, 3/16 plate. And that way I can make sure that my template actually transferred out okay before I cut this out of the expensive plate. Well, how's it fit on my template? It got a little weird. I don't know, I must have read the wrong side of the tape measure or something. But you know what? It's still gonna work fine because we still have tons of room that way. And we've got all the height that we need. So I think we'll make a real one now. And on the real one, I'm gonna cut out some little circles in here. And that way we can weld it along the end, along the side, up here, and then we can also put a weld in the middle so that we get good penetration on here. Yeah! Spicy. Well, I've been working on the C-notch. Jim is making up these little tabs, little tangs.
Tang.
And that is to remount the brake hoses, because the brake hoses originally mounted to the old spring saddles or spring perches, and he cut those off. Well, it's Monday morning. We're back in the shop and back on Andrew's truck again. On the last day, or the last part of this video, we just cut these out. I've got it all kind of squared up where I want it to be. Before I cut these ones out of the 3/16 plate, I did lengthen this again to be the same as our template. I did exactly like I thought, and I just read the wrong side of the tape measure. It happens sometimes. So this is all fit in here. I'm gonna tack it in a couple spots. Tack it in a spot where it's easy to get to if it's not in the right spot. And then I want to fit the inside backing plate or inside boxing plate, which is right here. I've got this set up at a height so that I'm planning on when I put the inside one on, that this top is the same height, and the bottom will sit kind of right on this edge right here so that we can weld it to here, and then we'll fill in up here. That's why I'm only going to tack this one, is because then I can get these vice grips out of here and double test fit the other one before it goes in. One tack, two tacks, three tacks. Okay, that should hold it. Pop these clamps off and then test fit the inside piece. This piece is all squared up now. We're perfect that way, all the way along. We're nice and square. So I'm gonna tack it in now. My measurements down here worked out great. We've got a nice little lip that we can weld in here, kind of fill that little valley. So I'm happy with this. You know how I learned how to do that? From watching YouTube. Bellows Customs taught me that, Loco-chan style. Okay, I think we can pull our clamps off. Actually, I've only got one clamp on it. Cool. What do I want to do now? Do I want to cut this out, or do I want to weld this up a little more? I think I might weld it up a little more and then cut it out. Cut it out. I think before I cut this inside out, I'm going to fit these pieces and square them all up so that they're the same going all the way across. I'll weld these ones in, then maybe fill in this top section, and then we'll cut the inside piece out. I'm all layered up. So I was laying on my back welding underneath. Gravity, sparks fall, hurts. Sparks Fall, Jim's 2003 emo band. All right, we're all squared up with the one on the other side. That's probably the hardest part of doing this, is getting this one in the exact same spot as that one. But we're there, we're level. We're the same distance from this hole to here, from that hole to there. We measured from here to here, did all the measurements, cross-measured this thing 118 times, and it is good to go. So we'll tack this in place and then fit the last one on the inside here. So I'm squaring this inside one up, and I've got it sitting on the the bottom lip where I want it. But look at that. That's not right. So I started double checking everything, and everything is good, except for this one that's too low. But look what happens when we put our straight edge across the bottom here, or a square. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that bottom rail there is not square at all. So I think what I'm gonna do is bring this up to where it needs to be, and then manipulate that bottom rail to, it's sitting like this and it needs to be like that. So pull it up with a C-clamp or something. The inside plate here is sitting where it's supposed to be to match that, and here you can really see how that bottom rail is kerchoinked down. So I think I'm going to weld the outside one and then maybe weld the inside here. Then we'll start building these. Once this is all kind of built and welded in, then I'm thinking I'll just take a C-clamp or something and suck that bottom rail up. But we'll get it all welded first, that way we're not, you know, as the bottom's coming up, we're actually pulling the top down or something. Boom, just like that, we cut out all our upper top pieces, and that took 2 minutes and 9 seconds. I've got all these pieces cut out. Oh geez. These are all cut out and ready to weld in now. I cut them a little bit small, and the reason I did that is this little valley right here, this V, that's what we want to fill up with weld. If you were to cut it to the same size as that and had it sitting flush on the end like this, when you go to weld that, your weld is only going to be on the outside edge, and you don't want that. You want it like this so that you get maximum penetration in that little V, in that little valley. Fill the valley up. So I'm going to tack all these individually, one at a time. This piece is flat, so I'll tack it there on both sides, tack it there, and then I think I'll use a C-clamp and suck it down, tack it there, and then same thing again, use a C-clamp and tack it down. I wanted to try it this way rather than making this into 3 pieces, because obviously the less welding that you have to do, the stronger and more efficient it's going to be. I've got the driver's side all welded up, so now we're ready to suck this gap shut with the C-clamp. Just give it a couple little cranks. You can see it going right up in there. So I think we'll probably tack it there, and then move our C-clamp over a little bit, suck this end up. Yeah, that worked great. So we'll do that same thing over on this side. Just squeeze it up with the C-clamp, weld her up. Bingo bango, look at that. Perfect. Now we can move on to cutting this part. Ooh, that's warm. Cutting that out. So I'm gonna use my favorite tool, the zip disc, on the Makita grinder to cut this out. Basically, we're just gonna use this as like a guide, and we'll cut through here, and then go around to the other side and do the same thing. I just cut out our inside pieces. We got that guy's gonna go there. It's held in with the C-clamp. This guy's gonna go here. And then this guy over here is gonna weld in like that. I made this a little bit fatter. We've got like 3/8 of an inch on each side. And that way we can weld it along the top, because welding upside down underneath stuff sucks. And that's a lot easier. There we have it. We got a big C-notch in here. That worked out great. I think our next step from here is we got to figure out rear shocks. Jim left these shocks on, or these shock mounts on, and then we had these little brackets down here that were for a sway bar. The top part here was hitting the frame rail up in here, which is still very warm. So Jim sliced those off, but I'm hoping that this bottom hole here will work as a shock mount. We'll put the jack underneath, put the weight on it, and I don't know, maybe measure it or something. So for the rear shocks, this is what we've decided to do. Those sway bar brackets that were on there, they're not going to work. In fact, Jim has already cut them off. They're gone, out of the picture. So the original guys went this way, yeah. Here's the original shock mount. It went like that and bolted to the bottom of that guy like that on the original spring purchase. What we're gonna do is, as you can see, we've cut this off and we're gonna weld them on the new spring perch like that, and then the original shocks are gonna work. The original shocks are, I mean, obviously they're raised up a little bit from what they used to be, but I think there's still enough travel in there. I've marked them and bottomed them out and measured it, and it's gonna be close. They might, once the bed is on there and it's full of gas, and Andrew's got a little Honda Ruckus that he rips around on that he wants to load in the back of this. So when that's all on there, it's gonna be close enough that I want to try it and see before we start trying to figure out a different shock situation. Worst case scenario, if Andrew's got this truck fully loaded up and going over a big bump, the shocks do bottom out, it's no big deal to pull these current shocks off, find one that's a little bit shorter and try it. But like I said, I want to try it first because I think they're going to work. So I'm going to weld this on here like so. Jim's finalizing the pinion angle. We had it just tacked in place, and once the weight of the truck went on the springs and the springs arced, it did change a couple degrees. So that's why we only had it tack welded. You can hear him cutting in the background right now. He's cutting those 4 tack welds off, and we're going to tip the front of the pinion down a couple degrees, and then we should be good. So hopefully by the time I'm done this, he'll be done that, and then we can button this up. These are all welded up now. I don't know if you could notice in the time lapse or not, but I did 2 passes on here. The first was just a fusion weld. We had a pretty good V, like a little valley in there. So I went in there with the TIG torch and I just kind of weaved that valley together. And that gave us really deep maximum penetration. Then I went back over with the filler rod and did a second pass, once again doing a weave back and forth just to join it all together. That is, I am 100% confident in that this is going to be a nice solid piece now. After, off camera, I heated this up with the torch. Had this clamped down to the bench, and then I just, both of them, they weren't quite exactly perfect 90 degrees, so I heated them up with the torch and bent them till they were good at a nice 90-degree end. So those are hotter than the surface of the sun right now, so we're gonna let those cool down. In fact, the bench is still nice and toasty. While I was doing that, Jim got the perches in place, tacked them, and then him and I flipped the rear end over to make it easier to weld, and those are all welded up. So we're gonna break for lunch now, and then come back after lunch while this is cooled down, and button it up, finish it off. Jim's got everything in the powder or coating oven right now, getting it ready to go. While he's doing that, I'm gonna run over to the drive shaft shop and get the drive shaft shortened. I just got back from the drive shaft shop and Jim's got this all put back together. He's also run some new brake lines. U-bolts are in, shocks are in, those shock mounts worked great. So I think now we are going to, I think I'm gonna put the box back on. I wanna see how much extra it squats with the box on, and then we're gonna be putting a fuel cell back here so we can figure out what kind of space we're gonna have for our fuel cell, if we have to do any modifications for these uprights here. But basically, we're on the home stretch of buttoning up the back of this thing. How many times can I say button up in this video? Button up. With the box back on, it hardly squatted at all, which is good. That's what we wanted. And I can build a little bracket now. I wanted to put this brake hose here rather than like fishing it through there. But I didn't know how that would work out with the floor. And that works out great right there. So this cross member is pretty much useless because we're not going to be putting the stock floor back in here. We're going to build a new floor. I don't know if we are or if Andrew's going to, but it's going to have a new floor that is higher than these, like a false floor, like my crew cab Brown Sugar has. So there's video 1 on Andrew's 56 Chevy pickup. We put the 8.8 posi rear end in with disc brakes and put a monster notch in it. The second video, which Jim has already gotten started on, we're pulling the front sheet metal off because we're going to be pulling this front suspension out and putting this setup in here, which is a heights independent IFS front suspension. So we just did one of these on Zach Wilson's 55 Chevy pickup, so should be pretty straightforward. Front sheet metal comes off. Probably going to have to pull the engine out. I don't want to, but I think it'll probably be easier to do that. So we'll cover all that in the second video. And now that the box is on, we can fit the fuel cell to see how that's going to fit back here. So, as always, thanks everybody for watching. If you want to support the channel, please check out lgspeedcustom.com and get yourself some LG Speed and Custom merch. Thanks to the Switchblade Valentines for the music on this video, local Victoria Rockabilly Psychobilly band. And yeah, make sure to subscribe and hit notifications so that when the second video pops up, you know all about it. See you guys later. Thanks for watching. You gotta pee?
Really gotta pee.